Welcome. At this time, if you ever so for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this time, I will open up the first, that's loud, hearing and privilege of the floor. I remind everybody it is 30 minutes. Each person that would like to address the board, please just state your name, address, adhere to our 5-minute policy, and the floor is yours. All right, so we'll close the first hearing and privilege of the floor. Remind everybody we will have one at the end of the meeting. And at this time, I will turn it over to Superintendent Schwartz.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board members, Mr. Giaquinto and I want to have probably a less than happy conversation, but we feel it's necessary to do this to talk about it a bit tonight. In the event that we are unable to pass the budget on the first vote, we will only have about a week to turn around a determination about where you'd like to go next, whether that might be back to the superintendent's recommended budget, directly to contingency, or something else. The timeline is very, very tight. I'm going to ask Drew to speak to that a little bit. So Drew, could you talk about what's got to happen in that short time?
Sure. The next meeting, I'll have a formal outline for the superintendent and the board on the process, but the way it works is you know that there's a revote statewide June 17th, but we have to have the ballots out, I think, May 28th. So it requires us to have the numbers and know what they are. It's similar to this process. We have to get it done in April to get it out for a May vote. It's the same process. You've got to have absentee ballots and all that legal notice, that stuff done before May 28th. So the board would have to have the number that they want us to go out with before that. So we'll give you that formal timeline on the 12th. I just started working on it. I've talked to other districts that have gone down, unfortunately, and what their process was, and what they shared with me was the board pretty much when they went out with a budget over the cap, they would have a number to fall back to pretty quickly because of the tight turnaround. So
I'll ask you to have that discussion with us on May 12th about if that were to happen, where we're going after that, so we can be prepared to move as quickly as we can. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Arquette and Mr. Benarek.
Good evening, everyone. Pete and I are very appreciative of the opportunity to speak to you this evening about weighted grades. Grading is a fascinating topic. It's one of the few topics in education where there's as much interest in it between faculty, parents, and even students. So we welcome the opportunity to talk about weighted grades with you this evening. It was a team effort putting together this presentation for you this evening, so I want to thank a few individuals. I want to thank Ryan, who's here with us this evening. Ryan is a former school counselor, so his advice was invaluable as we worked through this process. Our academic heads, Marissa Gordon, Matt Hubble, and Mark McCarthy. Megan Johnson did a lot of the data work for us, our IT director, and Dana Zapiri, our guidance counselor at the high school and department chair, who provided us with some really invaluable boots-on-the-ground feedback as we work through this presentation. Our goal for this evening is to provide you an overview and a recommendation regarding next steps that involve the system of weighted grades. We try to center all of our work in our district mission statement. There may be no more important system within our school than our grading systems. And when you talk about students trying to meet their full potential, to strive for their definition of excellence, grades are often how we assess and evaluate students in those metrics. We organized the presentation tonight through 4 guiding questions. The first simply is, what is a weighted grade? We then want to discuss with you why should we consider weighted grades. We want to talk about what it could actually look like if we did implement a weighted grade system. And then finally, what are our next steps? Turn over to Pete.
Hey, good evening. So to just get started into the issue of weighted grades, we want to take a look just to sort of preset and talk a little bit about what goes into an academic score and a grade as we currently use them at the high school. Most of us are really familiar with the 0 to 100 point grade scale. It's what most of us experienced through most of our K-12 education. But there are certain aspects of a 100-point grade scale that I think we sometimes forget about, and sometimes are could be considered. No grading system is absolutely perfect. So in some cases, there are aspects of 0 to 100-point grading that is fraught with imperfections. One of those that I would point out is that there are 64 points in a 100-point grading scale that are failing grades, right? Whereas only 36 of those points are in the passing range. In order to, in acknowledgement of that scenario, we do things with our additional sort of add-on policies and practices in grading to do what that first bullet says, which is to thread the needle of balancing teacher autonomy with what we call horizontal alignment. And what I mean by that is that students receive as consistent a grading policy across courses as possible. So if I'm in an Algebra 1 class with one teacher, that the grading policy of Algebra 1 in another teacher's class is reflective of similar priorities and similar details. Another aspect of that is this idea of having a grade floor. So looking to mitigate the imbalance of how many points there are on the failing side of that 100-point scale, we have policies that put students' floor grade at 50 in the first quarters of the year. The reason, in other words, they don't earn less than a 50 in the early quarters of the school year. And the reason for that is that if a student were to earn a 10 or a 15 or a 25 over the first 2 quarters, it will mathematically eliminate them from passing the course sometimes by mid-year in certain cases. And a failing grade is a failing grade, right? So a floor 50, in general, usually, if a student begins to perform in the satisfactory level, is going to allow for recovery of a course by the end of the year. And then homework and classwork also fits into that idea of it's an aspect of what goes into a grade. That's what we'd like to talk about next. What does a grade represent? Well, there's more than meets the eye, right? Obviously, it's progress towards the standards. That academic progress is what we're trying to represent, what teachers are representing for the students and for their families. But oftentimes, built into those grades are things like effort, things like responsibility, and the ability to complete work on time. The fourth item there of attendance, I want to point out that in New York State, by regulation, attendance cannot be a part of a student's grade. It's not formally a part of an academic grade that students receive. But the reason I have that on there as a consideration is because I think it goes without saying that if a student is chronically absent, it's likely to affect the score of their grade, just because the ability to do work, make up work, and whether that absence is because of illness or family factors, or perhaps because of discipline and needing to be out of school for an extended period of time, all of that is going to just sort of, by natural causes, have an impact on the student's grade. There are other external factors, like I just mentioned, students' family situations that can certainly play a role. So I think as we start to talk about weighted grades, and Rick's going to move into a definition of weighted grades, I think it's important to keep sort of all the factors that you can think of in your mind of what factors into what makes up a student's academic grade.
And I can confidently say that all of our high school teachers are thinking about what do they need to prepare their students for in terms of life after Scotia High School. This is an interesting chart. It is a job outlook from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and it looks at the key attributes that employers are looking for in job applicants. So you can see at the very top, problem-solving skill, right? That's something that all of our teachers are focused on improving in our students. Communication skill is high up on the list. I also found it interesting, teamwork, being able to work in a team is a critical attribute that employers look for. So our teachers are cognizant of this and something that they're building into their own grading systems. State Ed, I would also say, is keen to update their own graduation requirements to meet the new needs of the workforce. You've probably heard about before the Portrait of a Graduate. This is a new initiative by New York State. It's a total reimagining of what the state is expecting from students in order to graduate. Rather than focusing on assessment scores on Regents exams and passing classes, the state has defined 7 attributes that all students need to show proficiency in order to graduate with a New York State diploma. It's very interesting that they've talked about making the Regents exams optional as a result of this, finding optional or different pathways for students to achieve these proficiencies. And you'll notice that there's a lot of correlation between the previous chart. There's problem solving, there's critical thinking, there's communication. So the state is trying to adapt their own graduation requirements to meet the needs of a 21st century workforce. If the state sees this through, our current 6th graders will be held accountable to this Portrait of a Graduate by the time they are graduating seniors. It's interesting to note that as part of the Portrait of a Graduate work that the state is undertaking, they do expect to mandate transcript requirements. They're going to ask districts to align their transcript to statewide expectations that will certainly have factors that include all of the attributes of the Portrait of a Graduate. So what that actually looks like, we don't know yet, but we expect there to be definitions from the state as to what they want to see on transcripts for New York State students. Okay, now that we've given you some background on grading and where grading may be going in the state, what is a weighted grade? I asked my wife, she's a teacher, she didn't know what a weighted grade was. So let's define what it is. A weighted grade is assigning a weight to a class that may have a varying level of rigor compared to other classes. So the best way to look at it is through an example. Let's say a student has earned a 90 overall average in AP World History. Unweighted, on that student's transcript, it reads as a 90. However, if the district determined to weight all grades in that class, and I gave this example an arbitrary weight of 2.5%, you would multiply that 90 by 1.025. So on that student's transcript, for their final average for AP World History, it would read 92.25. That is the definition of a weighted grade. Any questions on that? Because that's a key aspect. Typically, when districts decide to weight grades, they focus on advanced level coursework, college level classes like college and the high school, AP, advanced placement classes, and some districts do also weigh their honors offerings.
So what we have in front of you here is just basically based on those 3 categories that we just had up on the slide, AP classes, college and the high school, and honors classes, for you to just kind of put in your mind or refresh if you haven't been through this before. This is the full panoply of courses that we offer that would fall into those categories at our high school currently. So you have the 12 advanced placement offerings. Most of you know that students take advanced placement classes. Those are standard set by the College Board. The curriculum is prescribed. The tests all occur on the same day across the nation. Actually, not all of the tests, but AP Biology is administered at the same time in New York as it is in Texas, as it is in every other location. It's a very standardized program and standardized testing system. Students receive a scale score on that, and generally colleges will accept scores of 3, 4, and 5 for college credit. Each college has its own kind of nuanced aspects of accepting AP scores. Our college and the high school offerings, the classes in that category are classes that students have the option of taking here at Scotia and actually enrolling in a college. The courses that are represented there are drawn primarily from Schenectady Community College, but a couple of them, one is from Oswego, SUNY Oswego, and the two SUPA classes that you see there are from Syracuse University. So that's Syracuse University Physics, Syracuse University Accounting. The difference between this and an AP course, among other things, but primarily for students, is that if you pay for the college credit, you receive what they consider to be a passing grade, usually 70, 75. You receive a college transcript for that course, and you receive the college credit, which a student can then transfer into another school. Finally, we just have those three honors classes, English 9, English 10, and Global 9 in the high school, and so we've included those for you as well. Any questions about the different types of classes that we have in this category at the high school right now?
I would just like to make a comment that we don't offer any AP classes in any arts at all.
That's true. But we have drawing and painting too. That is a college level class. We don't have that in AP. I have had students take music theory based on independent study in the past.
All right, thank you.
So back to our question about defining a weighted grade. Weighted grades can be used to calculate. I want to keep in mind that this is the overall GPA that we're talking about. So if you were to weight a student's average in one of those courses on the slide, the student would not see their average after quarter one weighted, quarter two weighted, and that type of thing. The grade would be concluded. The overall GPA would then have that additional weight applied to it, the overall GPA for that class. I want to talk to you a little bit about how we do manage GPAs and rank, particularly for the seniors at the end of their career here at Scotia-Glenville. We really only use class rank as what I call an internal metric, which is available to the students. The reason I'm calling it internal is that we don't publish class rank out for anyone other than the student, the individual student and their family, to know where they are in their senior year. It can be used in applying for scholarships. It can be used in applying for colleges. The High Academic Scholarship Award that we give in the senior year is a representation of the top 7% of our class. We do round students' overall GPA to the nearest whole number because it's statistically insignificant to draw a dividing line between a student who receives a 95.67 and a 95.55. So we round those to the nearest whole number. Students receive whole number grades all the way through their high school career, and then we select that top group for that recognition. What we have learned over the years, and this is not a new thing, but most higher education institutions have decreased the value on class rank. I want to show you what goes to the colleges and universities on the next slide. So there is a school profile that is uploaded through the Common Application that all colleges and universities are able to see about Scotia-Glenville. The purpose of that is not this. The purpose of that is to let the university admissions departments understand what the full range of offerings are at Scotia-Glenville High School as they consider the applicants from our school. Because we understand that college admissions departments are looking to determine, among other things, how many of the rigorous courses that were offered at their school the students took. What you see in front of you is actually the counselor report, which goes with each student, and you can see there that this is a part of the Common Application. This is the actual fields that have to be filled out. With this example, the student's rank is number 10. It's exact. Rick is going to talk in a moment about the possibility of using a decile rank as opposed to an exact ranking, which many schools do. And then you see right below that we would check unweighted because our grades are currently unweighted. There's the signal where we tell the college or university if our grades are weighted, and if they are, what the percentage is that's added to it. This report goes to the universities 3 different times during the student's senior year, so at the very start of the year, the middle, and then once the final averages have been calculated.
So it was really interesting to reach out to other Capital Region school districts, our neighbors, to see what they do in terms of grading policy. And we found, both Pete at his Foothills Council meetings and my work through Capital District BOCES, that it's about a 50-50 split. Half of districts have some form of weighted grades, whereas half are still unweighted. Here is a sample of, it's mostly the Suburban Council with Mahonison added in there. So you can just see a sample of districts that are using some form of weighted grades, and then you can also see a number of districts that are still using the unweighted system. It is also quite interesting that there's no standard system of weighting. Each district kind of does it their own way. And so you can see here are a few examples that districts sent in terms of how they weight their grades. And you'll notice that the weight could be anywhere from 2% all the way up to a 6% weighting, depending on what district you're in and what classes you're looking at. So let's talk about the potential benefits and drawbacks of implementing a weighted grading system. One potential benefit is that we could hopefully have more students want to challenge themselves with rigorous coursework, and as a result of challenging themselves, they would be rewarded with a weighted grade. If we do place value in class rank would be boosted for those students who are taking classes that are weighted. If there's a scholarship that places a lot of value in GPA or class rank, and that scholarship does not take into account whether or not a grade is weighted, there is a chance that a student would have a better chance of earning that scholarship. There is no impact, though, if we were to weight grades on our local Scotia-Glenville scholarships that Pete and the high school admin team give out every year.
I can just speak to that for a second. Each year, if you've had a senior go through before, you know this, but each year at our senior award ceremony, our community collectively, between individuals, faculty organizations, community organizations, service organizations, collectively, we give our seniors between $60,000 and $80,000 in total for each senior class. Those are all local community awards. I think it's a pretty impressive feat and ceremony at the end of the senior year. When I say there's no impact on local scholarships, that's because you all, as board members or board members in the past, have approved all of the criteria by which those scholarships are decided. Some of them may say, most of them, I should say a senior in good standing or graduating senior who, and then there's this list of other criteria that kind of help determine what the scholarship is. Many of them are leadership, service, activities. Sometimes it's specific to the field that they're planning to go into. We don't have any scholarships. A few of them may say a high academic achiever or someone with an average of 80 or better. That's pretty rare, but that's about as discrete as those scholarships are. So we're recognizing that there may be national scholarships or larger university scholarships that are determined with a more specific class rank, but the ones that are given in our community are pretty general when it comes to the academic side of things.
So when we start to outline the potential drawbacks of a weighted grade system, the reality is that there is no standard system of weighting grades. Colleges and universities know this, and they've built their own systems to try to level the GPA playing field. So in many instances, it most likely doesn't matter whether you send a college a weighted or unweighted grade. They understand that District A and District B, you're not comparing apples to apples when it comes to GPA. They have built their own internal metrics to try to level that playing field. It is possible that if we were to implement weighted grades, it would discourage students from taking classes that are not weighted. This could have an impact in enrollment. It is also hard to arbitrarily apply a weight to courses that they do vary in rigor. Not all of our college and honors classes have the same amount of rigor, so it's hard to say that they're all going to receive a standard value in weighting. Pete's certainly seen this. I've seen this too, where students, your high achievers, oftentimes put a lot of stress on themselves to achieve at the highest level. There is the potential for unhealthy competition and mental health concerns and strain if you were to implement a weighted grade system. I've seen students try to chase those GPA points, and by adding weighted grades to that, it could increase that strain.
What's the difference between that and you're already working to get your high grades? How does weighted grades change that?
Well, I think, we've talked about this a little bit. Go ahead, Mike.
So I was a school counselor for 12 plus years. Some things that I personally witnessed, and not just like one or two students, but dozens of my students is once you get into that game and you have those high achievers, they start learning how to manipulate the system in their favor. So for example, when you start locking rank and you're evaluating rank and they know their GPA is going to lock after the second quarter with their completed credits, they know, for example, I'm going to take as many half-year college and high school courses as I can, because those will complete in February. That's going to boost my GPA a couple 100 tenths of a point. I'm going to have X amount of college credits that I can then send on to that college, where I know my best friend is going to take the English 12 all year long course that's really 6 college credits, but it doesn't end in February, so I'm going to be able to edge them out of this one particular scholarship that I'm chasing. That is a real example of what happens there when you start playing that game. They start kind of picking and choosing, or they'll say, no, I'm going to take the full year course because that way if my GPA dips down a little bit in the second quarter when it gets a little bit rough around midterm time, it'll bounce back up by the third quarter when my mid-year report goes into the college. They're very, very crafty at those things. There's actual websites where you can find ways to tweak things around, and they give advice to each other, here's what you should do this. So it gets a little bit hectic sometimes.
That is not to say that there isn't unhealthy competition in general, because we see that quite frequently as well. But honestly, in my experience here, I have not seen some of the cutthroat things that I saw. And this is a little bit maybe not related to weighted grades, but to the class rank idea. In a previous school district that I was working in, we had a valedictorian, salutatorian, and the competition for only those 2 spots were really recognized. When the competition for that became extremely unhealthy in certain classes. Two people, you may have 5 kids, you may have 15 kids in a senior class that are really worthy of recognition, and only split by 1/100th of a point. Obviously, that's not necessarily a grade weight issue or not, but I think the fact that we recognize a group of our elite scholars is valuable.
Sorry.
It's okay.
The final bullet is if we did institute a weighted grade system, it would increase the achievement gap between those students who take courses that are weighted and those students who do not. So the rising tide that is weighted grades does not lift all boats. There will be a number of students who receive no positive benefit from a weighted grade, and that would just increase the gap between those students and those kids who are in those classes. So, like any great research topic, we started to dive into the data and to see what impact this would have on our students. And we were very interested to see, well, how are our current students that are in high-level classes, how are they doing? So we looked at our cohort that graduated last year. We looked at all of our AP classes in the 23-24 school year. And students in those classes, they finished the school year with an overall average of 91. That compares to if you took every high school class last year and averaged it out, the overall average was an 85. So students in AP classes earned an average of a 91 across the 12 APs last school year. It's also interesting to compare that number to how students did on the actual AP exam. So that's what this table represents. The AP exams, I think back in the day, they used to be a 4-point scale, now they're a 5-point scale. Our kids averaged a 3.4 out of 5 on all 12 AP exams. To put that in perspective, our kids did fairly well. 3 is a good grade. Many colleges accept a 3 as college credit. We outperformed New York State on 7 of the 12 AP exams, so 3.4 is a strong score. The College Board equates a 3.4 to about a B- or C+ if you put it into a letter grade. Compare that to how kids did in their AP classes. Their teachers assigned them an average of 91, which equates to an A-. So from my perspective, when I look at the AP system, it makes sense to me that our students, their letter grade in the class is one whole letter grade higher than the course itself. I think our AP teachers recognize that the classes are hard. It's a rigorous curriculum. Kids really work very hard. But I also think that those teachers are aware that they are high school students and reward them for their effort in those classes. As we dove into the AP data, just something important to note, just from my perspective and from a school-wide perspective, when you look at the composition of our AP classes, our AP classes are not representative of our high school demographics, and that's something we have to work on. This is pretty common throughout all districts in New York State, but our percent of students that receive free or reduced price lunch, that metric in the high school is around 35% for the entire high school. However, only 16% of our AP students are free and reduced price lunch students, right? In a perfect world, that our AP number would mirror the high school number because it would be a microcosm of our demographics in the high school itself. So more on this in a little bit. Pete, Ryan, and I reached out to a number of local universities and colleges to get their feedback on weighted grades, and so we tried to highlight some of the different pieces of information that those universities and colleges sent to us. The first quote is something that I've always promoted with my own kids. I want students to challenge themselves, right? And it is okay to have a slightly lower score in a hard class. And colleges seem to understand that they're looking for kids that take tough classes, and it's okay if their score is a little bit lower than a regular Regents level class. As I mentioned previously, colleges have their own system, right? They have their own system of recalculating grades based on what you send them. They have their own internal metrics. Colleges are also looking for more than just our GPAs, right? They're going to look at how kids did on standardized tests, like Regents, like the AP exam, like the SAT, to see if there's congruence between how the student is achieving in class and how the student is doing on nationally normed exams. Another support for kids taking the most challenging coursework that they can from a university. And my favorite quote is the last one, right? That colleges are really, they have a robust process to review applicants. They're looking at GPAs, but they're also looking at the rigor of those courses. Did that student challenge themselves? And they want to make sure that the curriculum that the student exposed themselves to matches their GPA. This is a study from the National Association for College Admissions Counselors. I think it's maybe a biannual study where they survey it's hundreds of four-year colleges and identify the top factors. And I'm sorry that the font is not as clear as I'd like it to be in that table. However, we did highlight the top three factors in terms of how and why colleges will admit students. The number one factor is how students did in challenging courses, kind of what was referenced in those quotes from the previous slides. They'll look at total high school grades from students and how challenging was the curriculum that the student challenged themselves with. It is hard to see and it's small, but just like Pete mentioned earlier, class rank has been dropping in importance. I think it's 6 from the bottom. I think when this study was done maybe 15 years ago, it was towards the top, but as Pete mentioned, class rank has been decreasing in value in the eyes of public institutions and high colleges. So this is where I have to give a huge shout out to Megan Johnson. We wanted to see what would happen if we weighted the grades of a cohort. So she was able to go back and pull out our cohort that graduated last year, the class of 2024. She pulled out all 4 years of those students' classes and grades, and she added a 2.5% weight to every honors class and to every college level class those students took and ran the numbers.
And AP.
Yes, yeah. AP and college level classes. So it was a significant amount of work, so we're deeply appreciative of what Megan was able to do with her data wizardry. Just as a highlight, we took a look at the top 10% of the class of 24. Their unweighted average was a 97.07, which is awesome. Like, it's really pretty awe-inspiring. After adding the 2.5% weight to those students, and those students, many of them took many college and honors level classes, the overall average of that group only increased by 0.7 points, or percentage points. So it was a relatively small increase based on the weighting system. The student that had the greatest increase out of the entire class went from a 96.03 to a 97.53, so it was a 1.5% increase. That was the largest increase of any student in that cohort. The bottom table speaks to what I mentioned earlier, where weighting grades will benefit the top half of a class. You'll notice that for the top 50% of the class of 24, if we weighted their grades, their GPA would increase on average by 0.56 percentage points, whereas the students in the bottom 50%, their GPA would only increase by 0.14 percentage points. So the gap would widen in GPA between your highest achieving students and those who are struggling with their grades. So we are winding down, getting to our closing thoughts. If we wanted to implement a weighted grade system, I'd ask you to go through this thought exercise. We have 3 students represented on this slide. And for the sake of this exercise, let's assume that for each of these students, they've met their full potential in their eyes, in their family's eyes. They've met their definition of excellence. Student A took all Regents classes, did a terrific job, finished with a 92% average. Student B went through a combination of honors and AP classes, has a 92. And student C, another Regents diploma, but is going through a CTE pathway. So that person is going to graduate with a Regents diploma plus a welding certificate. And so he or she could move right into the workforce, right, and be a productive member of society right after high school. Also finish with a 92%. If we implemented a weighted grade system, right, that student B would end with a higher overall average than student A or student C. So we would be saying that we place greater value in college level and honors courses than the other 2 pathways that student A and student C took. So, in closing, weighted grades could potentially provide a benefit to college admission and scholarship attainment. They will certainly widen the achievement gap between those students who are taking college level classes and those students who are not. They seem to have a relatively small impact on overall GPA. I know that for some students, every 1/10 of a point matters, but in the grand scheme of things, it seems like a small impact on overall GPA. It will place greater value on college level courses. And I would also say, our teachers do take great care in making sure every student's grade is reflective of their achievement in their class. Like, teachers take great pride in that. They spend a lot of time on it. And so I would say that teachers are really good at giving students grades that they have earned. So when Pete and I worked through this process with the admin team, we realized, and also in discussion with Superintendent Swartz, that it is the teachers who are truly the experts in their classroom, in their curriculum, and with the grades that they assign. So we feel it's necessary to vet this through our high school faculty. We'd like to present this same presentation to Pete's high school faculty at his upcoming faculty meeting, and then get their perspective. I'd like to know how our teachers feel in terms of whether or not they feel like weighted grades is the right thing to do for our students. Pete and I would take that data and provide it to you at our next board meeting with a formal recommendation. Some other action items that have bubbled to the surface through this research is when we think about our college level classes and why they are not representative of our demographics as a whole, it could be that there is a financial barrier. Our students have to pay to take college level classes. So I'd like to consider reducing or eliminating what those fees are for students, right? They can add up quickly. If you've got a junior and a senior, and they're both taking college level classes, you're talking hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars that you're spending on college level classes. Do you want to speak? Absolutely, yes.
Just one quick thing about that is that a couple of our courses that are AP courses run concurrently with college classes, meaning that I'm taking an AP English class for which I can also choose to receive SUNY Schenectady College credit for. So that I share this at our AP College and the High School night every year in January. It presents a challenge to the families in terms of how they want to sort of play their cards when it comes to enrolling in these classes. And this just gets to the point that Rick's making about barriers to entry and some of the decisions that families are faced with. So, for example, if you take that English AP class, the exam for the AP is going to be about $90, $94 at the end of the year. I could choose to take that AP exam at the end of the year and kind of put all my eggs in the basket of working towards getting a 3 or higher so that I can get my college to accept that as college credit. Or I could enroll in the Schenectady Community College credit course, and if I work hard and get a 70 or 75 average, I'm going to have that college credit. It's a little bit more of a sure bet, but it's going to cost me somewhere between 135, 100, higher than that for the three credit AP.
$110, and then the
Okay.
4 credit courses are like $285 or $305.
And the SUPA course in physics is like $800. Now, that's a great price for 8 credits, 9 credits at Syracuse University, but that's still a financial barrier. So I'm just sharing this on the point of the decisions that families have to make. Some families choose to take, well, I'll take the AP exam and I'll pay for the college credit. I'm going to get both runs at this in terms of how it's going to roll forward. But there are families when you're looking at students who are, over the course of their high school career taking 4, 5, 6, or 8 of these type classes, the dollars really add up, and they have to make decisions about, am I going to just go for the AP exam and put all my eggs in that basket, or am I going to be able to apply for the college credit? So I just wanted to detail that.
Thanks, Pete. We'd also like to consider moving to a decile rank. So instead of listing on the Common App that a student finished 10th out of 165 students, we would list that they were in the top 10% of their class. The reality is that within the top 10%, when we're reviewing the data from last year, students were tenths of points away from each other or hundredths of points away from each other. That is statistically insignificant. It's hard to say that one student achieved at a higher rate when they were a tenth of a point behind a classmate over the course of 4 years. And grading is critically important to everything we do in our school buildings, and it's critically important to Operation Graduation, right? So Pete's #1 priority for this school year and next is our graduation rate. So grading practice, grading policy, like Pete mentioned, the grade floor, those will be standing agenda items on his committee work moving forward. And he's a consummate professional. Even when the screen turned off, you just kept going.
No problem.
Very proud of you.
It's like my mind, it was blank.
To me, that was a sign that the presentation was over.
Should be over.
So,
time limit. We didn't realize we did have a time limit.
Once again, we really did appreciate this opportunity to dive deep into this topic. Pete and I went in with an open mind, learned a lot through the process, have specific action steps to take moving forward, but we welcome your questions at this time.
I got a question for you, Rick.
Yep.
Made a comment about the impact on enrollment. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, so if a student is very interested in GPA, right, and has a choice between a class that is an AP class or like an elective, it could be like a technology class, it could be a music class. If that student is super concerned about getting the highest GPA that they can, they would choose that AP. They could potentially choose that AP class over an elective that doesn't bear the same weight.
So I think you're asking, like, we're not saying enrollment of less students in the school, but just enrollment in those non.
Yeah, I thought you were going towards the classes.
Non-credit bearing classes, which are some of our, sought after electives for students. We could potentially have those enrollments drop to a point where we can't support running.
So we're not producing as well-rounded student as we would.
Exactly, it's more shuttling students just into the college courses.
Thank you.
The 2.5 accelerator that you put, was that just an arbitrary number for examples?
Yep. As we did our research, the weights ranged from 2% to 6%. And so we picked 2.5 as just, like you said, an arbitrary number.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have discussions with any of the schools that chose to do it as to why they chose it, and the schools that didn't choose it, why they chose not to? Or did you just ask a flat, do you do it or not?
We surveyed the schools and they filled out a survey.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
You'd said that class rank, you have the high academic scholarship award for the top 7%. Is that a financial award or just a straight award?
No, it's a medal, actually.
Okay.
It's just a
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to.
very important medal.
Understood. The thing I'm worried about, I don't have any personal experience with this, but this is what I'm hearing from parents, is something that you touched a little bit on, the scholarships issue. Because there are a lot of state and national where some parents felt like their kids couldn't even apply because there's either top 10% or top 10 people. If you don't even have that, don't. But and it basically, I guess, says it in the prerequisites or criteria. I don't know personally. I think that is what a lot of parents are concerned about, that we're close to that goal, but maybe because they were taking the AP classes, the college classes, their GPA didn't hit that, where there may be some students that aren't taking those that did hit it. Did you have any review into that or investigation?
Yeah, I mean, and to some degree we can speak to that, because in that data protocol that we had Megan help us with, we looked at just last year's cohort, but I think it's very similar. It looks very similar to previous cohorts. You're mentioning the top 10%. We had the top 18 students in last year's cohort, which is essentially the 10%. And when you added the weights to the courses that they took, there was a little bit of shuffling within that, but there was not a dramatic dropping out of students that had received that top 10% recognition and rank, and a moving in of students. We showed you that I think the delta change was 1 point. The largest change for one student was 1.5%, but the average change was less than that. I think we saw a little bit of a reorganizing of that top 18 students, but what it did not show in that particular class was that there were a lot of students that were taking those college and AP courses that, with the bump, would have then moved into top 10%.
Something that also kind of correlates with it, it's not necessarily weighted grades, but it does deal with the rankings and things. One of the issues I've heard from parents too, and I'll admit we have had experience with this as a family, where say for a quarter you get over 100. I don't know if it's because of extra credit or what have you, but because the way our computer system works, you only can do 100, which I understand what's the difference between 100 and 104, but say the next quarter they're getting a 90 or a 96, then that 104 the previous quarter would have been helpful towards it. Has there been any look? And I know that's outside the parameter of this weighted grades. I get that, but it's just one more piece of the grading.
I'm going to ask Ryan to speak to it because he has some student. Yeah, he understands the student information system side, which may have been an answer that you received, is that it's limiting. But what I would say is that at the very end, when our students are ready to leave us, their transcripts cannot have higher than 100 on them. So we don't factor greater than 100 all the way in. All the way in the quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, with the possibility that they might go over 100. But there are some limitations.
Yeah, so most student information systems, so that's like our Power School system and what we're switching to with School Tool, both of those systems in particular, and there's a couple of other ones, they don't calculate GPAs over 100. That's the cap. So they naturally just, the 100 is the best you can get. With School Tool in particular as well, the quarterly averages would not change. So even if we did move to a weighted system, that weighted grade won't be reflected until the completed course. So if you have a 90 average all 4 quarters on your report card, even if it's a 2.5% weight, instead of having that 92.5% GPA, you're still going to have that 90 GPA. Then at the end, the final grade would end up being the 92. So there's still some limitations in those systems and how they calculate those things. So.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you so much. It was so interesting.
All right, moving on. If I can get a motion, please, to approve the BOCES 25-26 administrative budget and board vacancies.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the Board of Cooperative Educational Services 25-26 administrative budget and board vacancies for Albany, Schoharie, Schenectady, Saratoga counties.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Questions, discussions on this?
Okay, question, Hal.
Yeah.
Is this typically all we get for the I guess, the nominees or who's up for election?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a bio on each one of them. Yep.
Thanks.
I know you have the ability, you can do your own research. I know the first year I was on the board, I really didn't know what it was, so I just went to Google and tried to find out who they were.
Yeah, that's where I
Yeah,
am.
but typically that's all we'll get. Yeah, good question, thank you. Anyone else? All right, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right. If I get a motion, please, to appoint poll clerks and inspectors for the annual district elections.
I'll make a motion that we appoint poll clerks and inspectors for the annual district election as submitted.
Thanks, Emily. A second?
Second.
Thank you both. All. Any questions, comments? All right, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstain? So moved. If I get a motion, please, on resolution number 8, awarding contracts for capital projects.
I'll motion to approve the resolution to award contracts for Scotia-Glenville School District 2024 capital project construction.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Chad. Any questions on this, comments?
I have a couple of questions. I found it interesting that with respect to the contractor, they have a pretty wide range, about $2 million it looks like, between the lowest and the highest, and we picked the mid-range, and I'd love to hear how you ended up where you ended up with Bass Hatfield.
So, a little background on the whole process. We were hoping to go out with bids in February. If you remember the original timeline, things got bottlenecked at SCD for no fault of us. We ended up going out late in the market, which was, we opened bids last Thursday. A lot of work has been awarded out there in the marketplace, so we didn't have anybody initially was going to submit for general contract with Bonaquisti. So we pushed the bids back to last Thursday, and Bonaquisti was the original low bidder, and then they withdrew on it. We go through the bids Thursday night, Friday, then we meet with the contractor on Monday before I bring them to you. And Bonaquisti withdrew on Friday, so we went to the next one, which was Bass Hatfield. So, yeah, and Bass you've had before in projects, they're solid. Yeah.
And then I saw for the plumbing, I guess, that we just had one.
Yep.
How does that work? I'm assuming if nobody's going to bid, then nobody's going to bid. It is what it is. I just didn't know, are there any special requirements that we had to follow since we only had one bidder, or
Nope. Sometimes you get no bidders and you have to go out and
try again?
find a bidder.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstain? So moved. I get a motion on resolution number 9 to increase the debt service reserve fund, please.
I'll motion to accept the resolution to increase the debt service reserve fund.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Chad. All right, anyone have any questions, comments? No? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed or abstain? So moved. I get a motion on resolution number 10 to accept gift donations for various senior high school scholarship awards.
I'll move to accept and appropriate gift and donations for various senior high school award scholarships with thanks.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you both. Anyone have questions, comments? Nope. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, so moved. With thanks.
I'll move communications A, staffing 1, and the placement of students with disabilities as submitted.
Thank you.
I'll
Second.
second.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? All right, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstain? So moved. Any question on the treasurer's report, March 25, or the budget transfers, March 25? No? All right. If I get a motion, please, for the minutes of the regular meeting on March 24th, 2025, and the special meeting, March 31st, 2025.
I wasn't in attendance at the 31st. Can we do them as two separate ones? Or?
We sure can.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll do the first one. March 24th. Motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes from March 24th, 2025.
Thanks, Jen. A second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Emily. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, if I get a motion now for the special meeting of March 31st.
I'll move the minutes for the special meeting of March 31st as submitted.
Thanks, ma'am. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, you have a question, sorry.
Yeah, in the miscellaneous section at the end, it says, there was a request for the information for the budget to be earlier in February. I think the request was earlier than February.
Correct.
So I would like to
move as submitted, as corrected.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, Kim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, so moved. Questions on the internal auditor's report warrants? Any payroll warrants, questions? All right, check warrants. All right, so moved. Moving on, other business. Anyone have any other business they would like to talk about?
Schenectady Connects has reached out again. They'd like to meet with the board to talk about what they have. And Susan and Drew, they'd like to meet with all of us together to talk about the opportunities they have and the programs they have and packages and funding, because they also know that we are in a budget season and funding is going to be important for that. But they'd like to try to set a date. I asked them to please reach out to you and try to get a date for all of us to meet. Chad, Kim, and I got a chance to sit and meet with them, and it's a really great program, so I would like to hopefully have them come here.
Thank you. Any other business?
I had a couple questions and a comment. The Glenville meeting about the SROs, did anything come of that, or are we still pending on that?
We saw Chief at the bus patrol, and they're still working on a date on their end.
Thank you. And then student member that closed up, when can we expect to hear about that?
I'm sorry?
The student member for the board that closed on March 31st, when can we expect to hear a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the high school will probably provide an update in the near future.
Great. Thanks, Pete. I just want to shout out Unified Basketball and Cheer starts on May 1st. They'll be away, but on the 2nd, they'll be here at 4:30. So I encourage everyone to go out there if they can and catch a game. And I just want to thank Voices for Change for hosting us a few weeks back for a discussion on the budget. So that was great. Thank you, guys.
Any other business?
I saw girls softball is doing a fundraising event, I think with Sienna this weekend.
Saturday.
Pink out?
Pink Out. On Saturday, there's 2 games at noon and at 2.
Yep.
I'm going to try to hit one of those, and it might be good to as many people as we get there. It's for a good cause.
Noon and 2.
Noon and 2 are the 2 games.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other business? All right, if not, at this time, I will open up the second hearing and privilege of the floor. Just remind everybody that we are at 30 minutes. If you'd like to address the board, please state your name, address, adhere to our 5-minute policy. All right. I will close the second hearing and privilege of the floor. I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
Thanks, Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstain? So moved. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.